From the studios in beautiful Oceanport, New Jersey, welcome to the biggest and greatest podcast ever. I'm your host, Ray K. Hey, Ray K here. This is an exciting catching up with Ray K. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. My three segments include my New York trip. I'm going to talk about some podcast news, my some recent news in the world stage that was really wild, and then my all-time starting a lineup, which is going to be pretty interesting. So let's start it off. My New York trip I took last week was quite a trip. I went to WFAN Studios. I have a great friend there that works there as a creative director, and he introduced me to a couple of superstar guys, football players. Everyone that knows sports would know the names. I got Tiki Barber I met, and I met Carl Banks, two great guys that are going to be working with me on this project that we're all going to be doing together. It's a multimedia company. It's a platform of all different things: sports division, entertainment division. We got charity. We got foundation. We're going to be helping autistic children. We're going to be helping getting them jobs to build their self-esteem, to give them a sense of purpose, to help society, because a lot of these boys and girls and adults are very creative. So it's going to have jobs for them, assisted living. Even for the adults when they get into the adult phase, that they have a high quality place to live. So it's a great thing. It's fun. You're helping. We're on the cutting edge of a great field as far as that goes. I mean, it's still early in the kids on the autistic spectrum, so we want to help, and this is a way to give back. And these guys were great guys. I met Carl first, Carl Banks, one of the, I think he was voted the top linebacker in the 1980s for that decade. He played into the 90s, couple Super Bowls. Unbelievably great guy. He's also a New York Giants announcer. So you hear him, every week during the season. He's real good too. My wife's a Giant fan, so she was telling me how good Carl is on the announcing. So I'm Packers, but I'll have to start listening now. Carl might be a guest on my show actually too, so that'll be pretty fun. Having Carl talk about his career and some of the new things going on. Tiki was great. Tiki is one of the all-time great running backs. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet, which is surprising. The guy, if you look at his numbers, 1,800 yards, 1,600 yards, 10 years, over 10,000 yards rushing. That's pretty darn good. He had that power speed combo going. But Tiki is a great guy. He has that great smile. He's multimedia. He's out there in all different ways, so it's exciting to have Tiki in there. And he's a worker. You want to work with good people that are hard workers, that want to give back, that have influence, and that influence grows exponentially. So it's kind of going to be an exciting run over the next, couple years. So that's another thing I'll keep everybody up to date on. We're also... Actually, segueing from that, I'm working to get a health minister in from England, because I went there to interview Winston Clements, Winston Ben Clements. Actually, if you look at a couple weeks ago, it was one of my best interviews. A lot of people were giving me high accolades for it. They were quite excited to hear Winston's story, which is very inspirational. It's one of the top inspirations I've heard. And Winston's speaking all around the world. All around England. I think he's in the U.S. now. So he's getting big. And through Winston, I met some great health professionals that are helping people on the autistic spectrum, and also caregivers that are helping people on the autistic spectrum, because you got to help the caregiver. It's a lot of work to care for people. And I think in England they give like £70 a week, to the caregiver. And I know there's a movement to bring that up a little bit, because that's not really obviously a living wage. And the caregiver is important, not only because of the care they're giving to the person they're giving it to, but because the healthier they are, the better the whole circumstance is. Obviously, if they're getting run down and sick and not being able to really be 100% fully healthy, their people under their care is going to suffer. So it's a great thing. So I met some great people in that category, and through that, I have a connection with the health minister in England that I'm reaching out now, and she's considering coming on to my show to spread the word internationally. 'Cause it's not just a issue locally, with autism. I had Gary Whiteson on my show about 3 weeks ago, which is a great show about all the great stuff they're doing on their nonprofit. But it's there's a bunch of kids out there and adults that get into adulthood that need help. That we're still in the early stages of trying to figure out how's the best way to help them. And in England, they're making great advances in that, and they understand it. I was shocked, actually, on one thing that actually Gary Whiteson was telling me, my guest from 3 weeks ago, that, there's police training on how to, handle kids that are, severe on the spectrum, because they could be perceived to be a little violent, but it's just sort of them. They're really not violent, but they look like they are. And when I was in England, one of my friends with Winston was telling me that these kids get arrested. These kids go to jail. So they're putting autistic kids in jail because the police don't understand. They think maybe that they're these high functioning people, and then when they see something like someone, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but freaking out or flip out for a few minutes, they'll arrest them. They'll throw them in jail, which is really sad. So there's a big education thing going on right now. So and this is, as we were saying, this is in England and the U.S. doing this. Can you imagine? Some of the other countries, like what's going on, so because it is a worldwide situation. So we're going to get the word out. I'm hoping this podcast really blows this up and ignites something, because we want to get the word out on this. And it's a world, podcasts go out worldwide. So, I'm hoping the minister has the time to come on the show to talk about all the inroads they're making in England in this field. And then we could share that with the world. And it's, the world's the village. So we're all learning this. And like I said, it's the first inning, but pretty soon we'll be in the third inning. And once we get this kicked off, that first inning is the hardest to get out of. Like as anyone that knows baseball knows, you got to get out of that. Once that pitcher gets out of that first inning, usually, if you notice, so there's a lot of smoothness going on in the game, so this is still that first inning trying to figure this out. Maybe we're halfway through the first, and it's an exciting thing because it's early and revolutionary, so I'll post you on that. Look for that show. I'm hoping in a couple of weeks to have the Minister of Healthcare Services come on from England and tell us all about the great stuff that's going on and what they see over there, and to spread it out worldwide, so that will be fun. My next section, I'm going to talk about news that's been going on worldwide. Mount Everest, climbing Mount Everest, the pinnacle mountain, 29,000 square feet. I mean, that's pretty high. I climbed 800 feet in Scotland once, and that thing, I was winded climbing that. So, 18 or 29,000. When you see 18,000 feet, that's high. So you can't imagine what that thing must look like. And 12 people died last week coming down the mountain. That's interesting. You don't think of that happening, because of an excess amount of permits that are given daily on the mountain. I used to think that maybe 3 or 4 people at a time would go up there. And then maybe 3 days later, you might get 1. Then 4 days later, maybe 6. I thought it was like that kind of thing, but there was a photo circulated internationally in all the media, and it was like a line, like a rope, like going to Disney World, like on the Crowded Day. It was like a line looping back down. It looked like it was thousands of feet of just people, and it was taking them 12 hours to get down the mountain. 12 hours, and a lot of them, succumbed. Because who knows, you're that high. I mean, I know there's names of these, I guess, this disease that affects you when you're high altitude. You get lightheaded. I had it once going to Colorado. When you drive fast up a mountain, it ignites this sort of disease thing, and you feel like you have a huge headache. You don't feel right. And I drank literally probably about 145 glasses of water at a restaurant that night, and I felt better after it. I mean, I literally kept drinking water, and then after each glass, I felt better, and I got myself hydrated. And for some reason, drinking that water helps. But you're on a mountain. I mean, you're 29,000 feet up there. I mean, I'm sure you only have limited amounts of water, because how much weight could you travel? Like getting up there. You're waiting. You might be panicking a little bit because you're not in the right frame of mind. You don't know how long it's going to be. Just think of waiting 12 hours, waiting 2 hours in a line, not moving, going on a great Six Flags ride, gets a little unnerving. So 12 hours, like from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, you're just standing there trying to get down a mountain. It's just mind-boggling that, I guess people don't realize it. Now they know. And no matter how expert you are, I guess you don't think of that kind of thing happening. I don't know if that's weekly or if that was just a freaky, like 1 week thing where the 12 people died and people were stepping over the bodies. I guess they have to airlift them down because it's going to be hard to carry a 175-pound body down a mountain. So just picture that scene, like walking over 12 bodies as you're going down. I guess you got to be wondering, am I next, especially if you're not feeling right. I mean, that's just crazy, and I'm sure they're going to change the permit rules after that thing made national, international press. So that was one of those eye openers. That who knew. But that's the great thing about news is now everybody knows. So now take your precaution as you're coming down the mountain. Be aware that, hey, this is no, you'd think going up the mountain was rough. Now you got to come down it, which you would naturally think is easy. But you got the weight. So, so you're going to suffer health-wise on the weight. So it's going to be interesting to see how what happens over the next month with people knowing that, I don't think I climb it, like knowing that, because you got risk coming down the mountain. Yeah, I made it up. Now you got to come down and you look down and there's these lines of people and you're just standing there. Anyway, that was one of those things that was, I don't know, just unexpected. I wasn't thinking that's how it was, But anyway, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, be aware of that situation, which, who knows? I mean, it's one of those bucket list things, and it's a exhilarating thing, I'm sure, being able to climb that thing, even just looking at it. I like to go just see it. That would be my bucket list, just looking at it. And in my final section, I'm going to talk about baseball, my baseball all-time lineup. So, I mean, it's the greatest sport in the world. I mean, historically, it's amazing. All the old pitchers and the whole thing, it's just such the home run derby of the 1960s, how kind of corny it was. Those corny commercials with Mickey Mantle doing the cornflakes commercial, Maypo. I don't know. Just baseball has that. I mean, and they're redoing a lot of those old clips to make it look modern, especially when they're colorizing these things. So you really got the feel for what it was really like instead of those old fast motion pitchers. So, baseball is, that's another whole show on baseball. I mean, it really is. It's life. Getting around the bases, you got to go home. Each base there's a little bit danger. You're up against 9 fielders. It's like 1 against 9. I don't know. The whole thing is it just blows me away how great of a sport it is. But here is my all-time lineup. I gave my fielding team last week. I'm going to add a couple new pitchers, too, because I really need a 4-man rotation. I just thought of that before I did the podcast. I don't know who these 2 pitchers are going to be, but there will be a couple new pitchers in here. I only got 2. I got Koufax and Gibson. So I'm going to add 2 more, and we'll figure it out by the end of my lineup. So I think I go 150-12 with this team. Now these are guys in their prime. Remember that. It's the 3 to 4 year time in your prime. If you ever look at stats, there's like those 3 or 4 years, and like at year 4 to year 8, that this is like crazy stats that they do. So I guess your prime is like 25 to 31 in baseball. That must be like the age. You get flukes where the guy's 37, or Bonds, who was on this, allegedly, I guess, or did he admit it, was on the steroids. So at like age 40, he's hitting like 73 homers. You get that stuff that's really wacko, but normally, historically 25, 31, 32 is like that prime. So this is that team at the prime. I'm going 150-12 this year. My leadoff batter, shortstop, Derek Jeter. In his prime, I mean, how can you go wrong with that? You got a little bit of power, you got speed, you got savvy. He's the leadoff guy. Number 2, Willie Mays, center field. I got to have power, and I got speed. I got probably the greatest all around player. When you look at speed, you look at field, and you look at all that stuff. I mean, Willie, number 2 is great for him because then he could drive Jeter in, and I got a little power at 2. 3, the all-time home run king as far as what you really think. I know he's 3rd, but you think of Babe Ruth, per at bat, and his stats. The best player hitting wise, you always go third. So that's why I got Ruth at third, because he was the best hitter, I believe, of all time in baseball. Number 4 is Lou Gehrig, the power guy, the guy that drives the runs in. You look at his RBI stats, unbelievable. It's just for like 13 years, 170, 184, 167, 152, 169, 171. It was all like in the mid hundreds. If he had like 140, it was low, until that last year, those last 2 years when he got sick. But that uniform RBI total was just like crazy. So Lou would be my number 4 hitter. Number 5, I got to go Ted Williams, because he had that big batting average, had the power too. But Ted, a lot of people say he was the best hitter of all time. It's like pure hitting, not power. But, I mean, he did have a higher average than Ruth lifetime at 344. I mean, think about that average. I mean, 344 average. Pretty crazy. And he batted 406 that 1 year, which he could have sat out and batted 399, like 8.6. That would have put him at 400. He chose to play that doubleheader. I mean, these days they might have sat, to get that heralded number, that 400 number. Ted played. I think he went like 4 for 6, and he wound up 406 this season. So I always admired Ted for playing in that doubleheader instead of sitting that out. So it just shows you what the guy was about. Memorial Day was this past weekend too, and he was in the war. I mean, the guy was flying planes. So I mean, you gotta love Ted. He was a little surly to the writers, but I really don't care about that. I mean, he was his own guy, and he's my number 5 hitter, Ted Williams. Number 6. 6 is tough, but I mean, I have Rod Carew as my second baseman. I got to go Rod, number 6. I want to get some average down in there, so I put him 6. I mean, the guy had a great on base average, and he was a great hitter. I think he batted 390 that 1 year, or 388. In the modern era, which was huge. So Rod Carew's batting 6th. 7th, I'm going with a little more power now. I'm going back to Bench. Johnny Bench. How's that? I got Johnny Bench batting 7th on my team. That's pretty crazy. But I want a little power at the bottom of my lineup. So he's number 7. I'm going to do a little change when I get to 9, because I forgot I have a DH possibility, because this is my like old time baseball lineup with no DH. I'm going to throw DH in here when I get to 9. 8th, I got to go Brooks Robinson. He's number 8 because he's the weaker hitter of this whole crew. But I want him in because of the fielding, as I mentioned last week. He was a good hitter, but I mean, you're talking like 272. So compared to those other 7, he's he's a lot lower. But I thought throw him 8. And DH, I'm going to put a DH in this. There's so many hitters. I mean, I'm going with power and average. You have Ty Cobb. You got Joe DiMaggio. You got Stan Musial. I mean, you got some great hitters. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I'm going with Hank Aaron though. Hammerin' Hank. I mean, Hank was one of my favorite. I think he was an even with Mays. Really, Mays had that New York thing going for him. But Hank, if you look at his stats, I mean, he surpasses just about almost everybody. He had that longevity. But Hank Aaron, I think would be the ultimate DH hitter for me. So if I put DH in there, I'm going to shuffle the lineup and put Hank number 5, and then everybody else down from there. So Hank will be 5, Williams 6, Carew 7, Bench 8, and then Brooks Robinson 9. So I'm putting Hank up to number 5. How about these 4? Mays, Ruth, Gehrig, and Aaron coming up right after one another. So anyway, that's my all-time baseball lineup. So I'm going 155 and 7. I'm changing it now. 155 and 7. I'm going. My 2 new pitchers. I forgot. I got Koufax. I got Bob Gibson. I don't know. I mean, I admired this guy so much. I got to put Tom Seaver as a starter, and I'm going to go back. I guess way back with either Walter Johnson or Christy Mathewson. I don't know. I guess Christy Mathewson, because he was 393 and like 112. I mean, he had a really crazy winning percentage. I mean, he doesn't get mentioned much. But Christy Mathewson, check his stats out. I mean, he was I mean, he might be the best pitcher of all time if you go by stats. So so I got him as the my number 4, and I think I'm not going wrong with that team. Maybe I'll put Dennis Eckersley as another reliever. Along with Mariano. Oh, do I need a lefty reliever? I guess so, but I don't even know who a lefty is. So I'm going to go stay with the 2 righties, Mariano and Dennis Eckersley for my bullpen. I'm going 155-7. I don't care what anybody says. That's my team. I'm sticking to it, and I don't think there's a better team out there anybody could pick. So there. Anyway, that was my fun part of my podcast. Anyway, it's exciting stuff going on. So we'll keep you abreast on the next version of Catching Up with Ray K. I wish everybody a great week, and we'll catch you later.